All right, Braves fans, let's get rolling. I'm George McNair. This is State of the Braves. Guys, it is really good to be back with you. As always, here we are in early February. Yeah, the doldrums of winter, I suppose, and yet we are actually very close to pitchers and catchers reporting down in Florida. Oh, to be in warm Florida right now. I kind of wish that was me, but anyways, it's exciting, right? Any bit of baseball is exciting, and so, I'm going to give you guys multiple episodes here coming up as we will be previewing the season, the roster, some projections and predictions that I have for the season. But in the meantime, in my next two episodes, I'm going to try to give you guys a breakdown of the Braves farm system. And especially what I want to do is provide my own ranking of who I think the top prospects are in the Brave system. I'm going to kind of go off on my own a little bit here in terms of how I rank my players. A lot of it will be based more on high ceiling upside, and but also, it's my own system. So where I put certain guys will definitely be different than what you would see by like MLB's top 30 prospects for the Braves or some of those other Braves websites or publications out there. I'm going to try to give you guys my reasonings behind each of my rankings for these guys. If you don't follow the Braves minor leagues too much and prospects, these names might be new to you. So I'm looking forward to introducing you to some of these guys. And the Braves farm system is not highly touted across baseball. But I'm still excited about some of these guys. It's very intriguing. The Braves have some real talent, especially at the lower levels of the minor leagues. Yeah, it means they're several years away, but the good news for Braves fans is our MLB roster, our MLB roster is pretty stacked full of talent. We don't have a lot of holes to fill, and so we have some years that we can be patient with some of these prospects as they come up. But yeah, the Braves farm system is definitely considered by many supposed experts across baseball as a bottom third farm system. The depth of the Brave system is light. That is true, especially at the higher levels. I think this is still this is still the Braves feeling the effects of the international signing pool ban that they had to endure at the end of the John Coppolella era. I've talked about that in recent podcast episodes, but the Braves have proven quite adept at developing players and finding diamonds in the rough. The Braves have had a recent Rookie of the Year in Michael Harris. They've had, of course, Spencer Strider in the same year, finished second Rookie of the Year. Neither of these guys were ever top 100 prospects. So the whole top 100 prospect thing, or the whole ranking of farm systems, it's not worthless, but it is not the be all end all to judge farm systems either. So, look, one of the things that I really appreciate about how the Braves do prospects, choose their prospects, target their prospects, is they really target, of course, every system targets talent, but the Braves really care about character and a guy's intangibles. Alex Anthopoulos talks about this quite often. He talks about it in whether they're looking for a free agent or a trade or looking to target prospects. But I think it's especially important for young guys, especially in the international pool. You're talking about signing a 16-year-old, and how can you project a 16-year-old in 5, 6, 7 years down the road, what kind of baseball player he will be? And you can't project physically exactly how that guy's going to develop, but you can have a better idea of the character of a guy and how hard he's going to work. And so, a guy who works hard and has a good mental mindset is far more likely to develop and get the most out of his ability. That is true no matter what level of athletics you are in. The most talented guys at 16 years old, at 18 years old, at 21 years old, they could peak right there and never get any better. Why? Because they're simply not willing to put in the effort, or they might not be humble enough to see where they're failing and target those areas of weakness. Yeah, they simply might not be willing to do what it takes to improve. And so by drafting solid dudes, again, like Michael Harris, Spencer Strider, Bryce Elder. These are the guys I mentioned because they're the most recent examples. And yeah, Bryce Elder struggled in the second half of last season, and I have some of my doubts on him, but he's, I think, getting the most out of his physical ability, right? These guys are hard workers, solid dudes, and these guys are great examples of, the Braves having a great recent record at hitting on their prospects, and they all have in common the fact that their intangibles and character are off the charts. There's always going to be a lot of volatility with prospects, but with this philosophy that the Braves have in place, and good talent evaluators, of course, good scouts, and a proven development system, their minor league system is excellent at developing players. I think the Braves fans can have a lot of confidence that there are still going to be some really talented and solid players coming up through the farm system in the next couple years, right? Even though the Braves don't have many top 100 prospects, um, who really cares, right? Who cares what ESPN or MLB TV says about our prospects? We might not have as many, um, raw talented players as some of the other teams, but that raw talent only means so much if you can realize it. And the Braves have been able to find some guys who, like Michael Harris, again, a great example, who, he was a third round pick, but was never a top 100 talent. And he could honestly, his ceiling is through the roof. I mean, top 10 player in baseball potentially, and he's just starting to realize some of that potential. So yeah, the Braves do tend to have fewer top 100 prospects, and really for two reasons. They tend to move their prospects aggressively through their system. So prospects that move really rapidly, especially if they aren't first round picks, sometimes you can get to the big leagues without ever even being ranked highly, and that was the case with Harris and Strider. The Braves also don't play politics with their top players. A lot of teams do this just to get their players on the top 100 lists. But again, who cares about that? How many countless players have been on the top 100 list that have never made the big leagues? Braves fans don't have to go back very far to remember Kevin Maitan, who was supposed to be a can't miss. He was getting comps to Miguel Cabrera, and he never did anything. Um, so those rankings only, they don't mean much, and that's, I guess, my main point. We know that the Braves don't have many positional needs to be filled anytime soon, except possibly in the next few years shortstop, depending on how Arcia plays. So pitching development over the next year to 2 years is actually the most important thing in the Braves system right now. And this matches up with what the Braves have. Their top prospects are pitchers. The best prospects closest to the majors are pitchers. So the timing of that is good. Obviously, we still need these guys to come through and be real players. But it is encouraging that there's several potential high-end arms getting really close to the big leagues. Probably the Braves' most talented, or most of their most talented position players are 3 to 5 years away. So a little bit of patience there is fine, and we can be patient again because the Braves are so deep. We just simply don't have a lot of needs at the big league level. All right, so guys, I want to go ahead and get into. I'm going to divide this episode and the next episode. So today we're going to go through my my top prospects 9 through 16, and we'll start at 16 and go down to 9, and then in my next episode I'll go 8 through number 1 for the Braves prospects. And again, these are my own rankings of the guys I really like, and I'll try to give you my reasons for that. So my number 16 prospect for the Braves is the shortstop by the name of Mario Baez. So Mario Baez, I hadn't heard of this guy until recently, and I'm a little excited, honestly, about the potential of Mario Baez. He's a very young player, which is why he's lower on my list. Still, this is top 16, so all these guys I think highly of. Little known prospect. He debuted in the Dominican Summer League for the Braves last year at just 16 years old, coming out of the international pool just before that. And he was probably the most impressive 16-year-old the Braves had last year. He signed for $240,000 out of the Dominican Republic in 2023. And his early results were just very exciting. He hit 311 with a 393 on base percentage and a 422 slugging percentage from the shortstop position as a 16-year-old. So these are very impressive numbers. Yeah, it's not a ton of games. It's a fairly small sample size, but it's still a really encouraging start to a guy that, $240,000 isn't nothing. It's kind of like the second tier. Usually your top prospects will get in the millions, 1, 2, 3, maybe even 5 million. But then your second tier tends to be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars range, and that's where Baez was. So the Braves probably did like him a lot, but he just wasn't on our radar much. He's only 5'9", he's 175 pounds, but he's only 16 years old. So he could actually get a little taller, he could get a little bigger. He's got really good contact skills. He's got a solid glove and excellent plate discipline, as that on base percentage showed you that I mentioned earlier. So decent pop, decent size, and to be able to maybe stick at shortstop. This guy, if everything breaks right, and I know that's a big if with him being so young, but if everything breaks right, the Braves could potentially have a real steal here with this 16-year-old. He is very young, right? But it's easy to dream on what he could be. We'll have to keep an eye on him. Honestly, it's just kind of year to year when you're this young. You just kind of watch from afar, see when he maybe can get into the minors. Usually you go from the Dominican League to the Florida Summer League, and then maybe from that, he could possibly get to low A. This year maybe, but probably the following year. So we'll just have to, again, be really patient on him. But um, I'm pretty excited about Mario Baez. All right, number 15 on my list is David McCabe. Some of you guys may have heard of McCabe. He was a fairly recent draft pick by the Braves. He is a first baseman, third baseman, probably DH, quite honestly. So big time power from McCabe, power bat, and a switch hitter at a corner infield spot. So just on that surface, it seems pretty exciting. Now, the problem is defensively, there's a lot of questions. Probably can't stick at third base, so maybe he's a first base DH kind of guy. Yeah, I mean, you might question, like, is he a possible future DH to replace Ozuna when he moves on? Maybe, but he's going to have to hit and hit for power, right? If you're primarily playing DH, you have to hit and hit for power. And there's been a little bit of question mark with McCabe if he can do that consistently. He hit well at low A, but he was pretty old for that level. He hasn't really shown consistent power at high A, and then he also went into the Arizona Fall League this fall and didn't really hit for any kind of power there. I think he had 17 total home runs in the minor leagues this year, which again isn't terrible, but I think he really has to mash to catch the Braves' eyes simply because he does not have a real solid defensive position. So we'll have to see. This is probably a really important year for McCabe. I think he's about 23 years old. A good year at Double A may push him up the Braves board a little bit. But yeah, he has to hit for power. If he has a bad year, this could really drop McCabe drastically based off of his defensive limitations. So it's a wild card. Now, maybe he comes back after this offseason and, physically he's improved and he is able to prove himself at a defensive position. So that would be another way that he could climb up the Braves board a lot more. But we've seen with a couple recent Braves prospects, if you can't find a solid defensive position, it really harms your value to the team. Okay, my number 14 Braves prospect is Drew Hackenberg. So Hackenberg was taken out of the second round in this past year's draft by the Braves. He was actually a pretty big surprise, had a lot of people scratching their heads as to why the Braves would pick Hackenberg that highly. I think the Braves also gave him like a $2 million signing bonus, which was above slot. His numbers at Virginia Tech were not impressive. But obviously the Braves, they do a lot of analytics. They really liked Hackenberg. He's a right-handed pitcher who he comes from a very athletic family. If you've heard the name Hackenberg before, he had a brother who played quarterback, I believe, at Penn State. He also has another brother in the minor leagues right now. So very athletic family. The Braves love, love, love athletic pitchers. You'll see that down the list as we go through some of the pitchers that are on this list for the Braves, and he's another one of them. So, when you're athletic, you're usually better at a repeatable, um, a repeatable landing spot and release point and all those things with your pitches. So he's a guy with a lot of movement on his pitches. He doesn't blow guys away with a fastball, but sinker slider guy, makes his pitches move. Makes guys put the ball in play. So I'm kind of thinking, I haven't been able to see this guy too much, but sounds kind of like a Bryce Elder type. So I don't know if that comp is totally warranted or not. Look, this guy is probably a high floor, low ceiling kind of guy, right? He's probably never going to be a top of your rotation pitcher, but he's probably a guy who is likely going to make the big leagues and could, even as a low end starter or reliever, be something. So he's a guy to keep in mind. Let's watch this upcoming season. If he is solid across the board in double, maybe even triple A, you could see the Braves maybe utilizing him in the big leagues fairly soon. All right, my number 13 guy on the list is Giancarlos Lara. And he is a right-handed pitcher and another guy to be really excited about. So he's another international signing, and this guy really came out of nowhere. He signed for only $10,000. Most pitchers that are signed out of the international pool, they are not the big money guys because pitchers are so hard to project when you're talking about 16-year-olds. Now, Lara was a late international signing. He signed at 18, which is fairly rare. And he could be an absolute steal from the international pool. He has to figure out his command, but he has really great stuff. Still young. He's 20 years old, still pretty raw. And pitchers of that age are notoriously volatile. So, he could come out and there's no telling what could happen this year with Lara. He could dominate and that command could really sink in, and suddenly the Braves have a tremendous talent on their hands, or the command could leave him entirely and we never hear of the guy again. It's just, it could really go in any way. He finished last season in High A Rome, and it was very impressive. In his two starts there, he struck out 18 batters in 9 1/3 innings. So this guy is like mid 90s fastball, good spin rate, vertical slider. And the question is, can he develop a third pitch? Does he even need to develop a third pitch? Probably as he gets to the higher minors and the majors. But right now, there's a lot of positives to this guy, Giancarlos Lara. All right, my number 12 guy is Isaiah Drake. Isaiah Drake, outfielder, tremendous athlete, and brother of former NFL running back Kenyon Drake. So any football fans out there might remember Kenyon Drake. And Isaiah Drake looks like a running back. He is built. He's only 18 years old, but you can tell this guy is strong and crazy athletic. Advanced tools. A lot of the sites out there call his speed blazing speed, good defender, and a potential power bat. So speed and power, that combination is awesome to have. But the question is, can he put the bat on the ball enough to make all of that play, right? You got to get on base. And if you have power, you still got to hit the ball first to utilize that power. So I think Isaiah Drake, as an athletic 18-year-old, he is a lottery pick of sorts. I think the Braves tend to lean more on guys with good hit tools, and that is a question mark for Drake. But if they can develop his hit tool, given the fact that he's so young, this guy could be a tremendous find for the Braves. So very high upside. I'd say one of the higher upside guys in the Braves system. Again, only being 18 years old, and that power and speed combo could really be special. I like Isaiah Drake, and he's definitely a guy that gets me more excited on this list, and I will be watching him over the next year or two to see where he ends up. All right, number 11 on my list is right-handed pitcher Cade Kuehler. I hope I'm saying that right, Kuehler. And so Kuehler is lower on most lists than what I have him actually a little higher on my list than most people. And that is due to his violent delivery and his shorter frame. And, that causes a lot of people to worry. Maybe he'll have command issues, and he has had command issues at times. And being smaller, maybe some more injury potential. But look, his stuff is legitimately great, and his ceiling is higher than a lot of the pitchers on this list. Yes, he is short of stature. I mean, he's not that short. He is listed at 6 foot, which is still kind of short for a pitcher. It's really kind of Spencer Strider size when you look at him. Mid 90s fastball, nasty slider, and he will make you think of Spencer Strider when you watch him. He also has a mustache. I'm not sure it's as good as Spencer Strider's mustache. You can be the judge of that. But look, there's only one Spencer Strider out there. I'm not comparing him to Strider, but there are definitely some shades of Strider there. The Braves have certainly they look, they didn't care about Strider's slight stature or anything like that, right? They saw through that and what he was doing on the mound. And Strider has, if you need to overcome that sort of thing, I guess you could say he's overcome those disadvantages to be one of the best pitchers in baseball. So Kuehler is definitely one worth keeping an eye on. He's a wild card for me as a guy who could rocket up through the organization if things kind of fall right for him, just because he has awesome raw stuff. All right, number 10 on my list is catcher Drake Baldwin. Lefty hitting catcher. He hits the ball really hard to all fields. So he has great exit velocity. When he hits the ball, he hits the ball really hard. He has very real power, and I really actually like his swing. Some people will say that he's got some holes in his swing, and I think that probably is true. But look, the fact that he can hit the ball at a pretty elite hard hit rate, I think matters a lot. And doing so as a catcher is pretty good. So he flew through the minors last season. He was drafted through the draft. He was drafted out of college, so he's a little bit older. But yeah, he moved very quickly up through the draft, through high A, double A, and actually finished the year briefly at triple A. I'm not sure if he will begin the year at triple A or they might start him back at double A this year. But if he succeeds, he he could be in MLB ready, or at least close to MLB ready offensively. Now, defensively, being a catcher, the Braves might want to take their time with him a little bit more and let that develop. Of course, the Braves this year are not in need of a catcher, and maybe not even next year. They could bring back d'Arnaud for another year, but of course, d'Arnaud is getting a little older. So I think if Baldwin were to, potentially get there offensively and defensively, he could make sense as an heir apparent to d'Arnaud, as a backup, of course, to Murphy. The Braves are light on catching prospects across their system. So Baldwin, I think, is very valued to them, and we'll just see where he ends up at the end of this year. All right, and finally, at least for this episode, number 9, Spencer Schwellenbach. He is also a right-handed pitcher. Spencer Schwellenbach is actually higher on a lot of lists than on mine, and I'm going to try to explain why in a minute. But due to Tommy John surgery shortly after he was drafted, he has actually only pitched 65 total innings in the Braves organization over the last 2 years. So drafted out of Nebraska as a potential shortstop and pitcher, he is just like some previous pitchers already talked about in this episode, including Hackenberg. He is the quintessential athlete pitcher the Braves really like. So, I guess why he's a little lower for me is he hasn't really proven much. And the video I've seen of Schwellenbach this past year, it didn't blow me away. Everything that he does is pretty solid, but not dominant. Good fastball, good slider, and again, very athletic on the mound. So, it doesn't mean that he can't be really successful, but does he have that high end Ceiling, I see that a little less with Schwellenbach. 2024 should be a pivotal year for him and his development. He was good, but not overpowering in his small sample size last year. So, look, he has the ability, but he's a bit behind developmentally. So this season probably is, I wouldn't say it's make or break, but it's pretty important for Schwellenbach. Now, one last thing I will talk about before I go today is I have not included, and I'm not going to include this year's international signings in my list due to their very young age. I mean, guys, these guys are literally 16 years old. But I do want to discuss them just a little bit, just to mention what's going on with the Braves international signing. This happened a couple weeks ago, so I definitely want to cover this. Jose Perdomo was the Braves' big international sign at this year at $5 million. That was actually the most that any team paid a prospect. He was ranked number 3, I believe, in Major League Baseball international prospects. He is a shortstop. I don't know if I mentioned that. And look, international prospects are 16, 17 years old. They're rife with volatility given their age. There's no telling, right? The biggest deal the Braves have signed or signed before this one was Kevin Maitan, who was supposed to be a can't miss prospect in 2016, and he was a bust. I mean, he never made it to the big leagues. And there's been plenty of those guys over the years. Of course, Maitan was probably overly hyped. He was also apparently by the Braves illegally obtained. So, the Braves lost. This was part of the Braves international pool ban, and they lost Maitan. He went over to the Angels, but still never made it to the big leagues. So Perdomo has gotten some really big comps like Miguel Cabrera, which is maybe the more extreme comp. He's also gotten the comp of Gleyber Torres. He ranks among the best pure hitters in the draft and can likely stick at shortstop unless he outgrows the position. So I like both those things a lot about Perdomo when I hear them. The fact that you're signing a guy who athletically can probably stick at shortstop and has a great hit tool. I love prospects with hit tools. I mentioned this before with Isaiah Drake, who they don't know for sure if he's going to be able to make contact consistently. It's really hard to teach guys to hit. So the fact that at 16, 17 years old, Jose Perdomo can hit the ball, okay, let's go. I really like that. So, guys, often the biggest hyped prospects fall flat while the under the radar guys succeed. So in some ways, I think it's kind of harder for guys like Perdomo. You give them $5 million, and, oftentimes coming from impoverished countries. And I mean, look, you give $5 million to any 17-year-old, you have no idea how that guy's going to react. And so, yeah, a lot of times it's the guys who are the lower level guys. They're more motivated. And the Braves have seen that firsthand with guys like Acuna and Albies. These guys were not the top of the list prospects at the time. Yes, of course, they become superstars. But you do have, of course, examples of some top signees making good, like Miguel Cabrera. It's just difficult to project teenagers ever, right? It's a numbers game, ultimately. The Braves, all told, were able to sign 12 prospects. Perdomo only being 17, right? He's years away from the majors. If he turns into a phenom, then, maybe he arrives by 2027 as a 20-year-old. That's the earliest that we could probably expect to see him. He is a Venezuelan, and this has been talked about a little bit, but he has a dream of playing with Ronald Acuna, so maybe that fuels him even that much more to play for the Braves and play with Acuna. Other notable signees the Braves signed, they signed outfielder Juan Espinal for $440,000. This guy is supposed to have great speed and athleticism and is a fluid outfielder. Defensively, they signed right-handed pitcher Anthony Gonzalez for $60,000, outfielder Isaac Osorio for $35,000, and outfielder Gabriel Sessa for $30,000. Sessa is also supposed to be a speedy, athletic outfielder. So they signed some other guys for much less than that, but those were the notable guys. But again, these guys are super young. It's kind of unfair to expect anything of them over the next probably 3 or 4 years, but we can certainly root for them. They are Braves in the Brave system, so it would be great to see them at the minor leagues over the next few years. But guys, one takeaway I have for you this episode is, you know, the Braves farm system right now, there's a lot of talent there. It's just mostly at the lower levels. Um, and, it's going to take some time for these guys to make it to the big league. So we do have to be patient with that. So this year, um, and I'll talk about some guys who are potentially going to make it to the big leagues this year in the next episode. But this year, for these guys I mentioned especially, this is going to go a long ways to clarifying what the Braves really have in terms of their system as a whole. And with several years now, the Braves being able to re-enter the international prospect pool, and with some really good drafts done by Alex Anthopoulos, uh, the system is really starting to replenish itself, and I think that's going to be on full display this year. And we get another draft, and new guys will be coming in soon as well. So that's always exciting. All right, guys. So in my next episode, I'm going to give you Braves prospects 8 through my number 1 prospect, and after that, we'll start doing our preview for the 2024 season, which is super exciting to think about. The Braves have a lot of good vibes going into this season, and I'm really excited about what they're going to do. So, guys, thanks for tuning in for another episode of State of the Braves. I'll see you soon.